Hey everyone, it's Norm Farrar, aka the Beard Guy here, and welcome to another Lunch with Norm, Rise of the Micro Brands.
Lunch with Norm, lunch with Norm, lunch with Norm, lunch with Norm.
All right, we're broadcasting to you live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And if you're watching this on a replay, just skip ahead and get right to the meat and potatoes. If you're watching on my personal page on Facebook, you can always shoot over to the official Norm Farrar, aka the Beard Guy. We'll have whole episodes, video highlights, content, references from any of the guests. So check it out. It'll be a good forum of content for anybody who's looking to dig a little deeper into what we're talking about. So Kelsey, are you around?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. So everyone, if you are tuning in right now, just please like and share this video. We are an official podcast, so you can go ahead and search us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you'll be able to find lunchwithnorm.com or Lunch with Norm podcast anywhere you find it. We are on social media, so you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, even TikTok. All of these episodes that are uploaded today go up to YouTube. So you have full-length episodes, and we even have short videos too.
And also with all the social media that we're doing, we're trying to mix up the content. So if you're looking at LinkedIn or if you're looking at Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, we're trying to mix it up. Or we are mixing it up. So you're not seeing the exact same thing on social media. So you can check that out. Now, completely selfishly, I just going to talk a little bit about my other podcast. So if you don't know, I have another podcast called I Know This Guy, which has nothing to do with Amazon, except we've got some really great Amazon people that you would recognize on the podcast that are just talking about their ups, their downs, and everything in between. So check it out. There's some really cool people there. And what's a little bit different is who I thought was really interesting to bring on. Well, the guest then recommends somebody, and you wouldn't believe some of the people that we've got to just through our other guests. So check that out. And I think that's probably it for the updates.
Yep. Just let us know where you're watching from too. We'd love to know. And yeah, that's it for me. Enjoy the show, everyone.
Okay. So today, not only do I have a big announcement, but I have a business partner that we're going to be talking with. So I'd like to introduce to you the co-founder of Sponsored Profit, and it's not profits, it's Sponsored Profit, Darrell Paterson. Darrell's a PPC wizard, and he'll dive deep into some of the into Amazon sponsored ads. So stay tuned. He'll be up in a second. But if you have any questions, just throw them over in the comment box. But most importantly, sit back, relax, grab your cup of coffee, and enjoy the podcast. Okay, Darrell, where are you?
Hey, Norm. How are you?
Good. So, the big announcement.
Yes.
We've been working together for some time, as if any of my clients are watching right now, but decided that Darrell, Tim Peakman, Laura McCall, we are now partnered in Sponsored Profit, which is a PPC agency. And we've got some really incredible tools we'll be talking about a little bit later on. But Darrell is the wizard behind everything. He really amazed me when we first started talking and getting him on board with my clients and seeing how he turned around the campaigns. So, Darrell, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I started selling on Amazon myself back in 2014, I believe it was. So yeah, 6 years ago. And one of the biggest frustrations for me was ads. Right, it was quite easy back then comparatively to how it is now. And after trying pretty much all kinds of software and trainings, and there's so much information and misinformation out there that I just figured I had to come up with a better way of doing things and come up with my own strategy that worked for me. And yeah, so from there, I started working with a few friends and helping a few other people out, and that kind of just all kind of grew from there, really. And now, you know, this is all I focus on. This is all I do day in, day out is just PPC.
Very good.
And I love it.
So, and I know you do. You have a passion for it, and that's what I love.
Yeah, really.
I see that Becky is on the call today from the UK. Hello. And Simon is
Becky.
back. So, hi, Simon. How are you? Okay. So, and remember, Simon, you always load up with questions. So, you know, make sure they keep coming. We love answering them. All right, Darrell. So now it's time.
Time.
What effect have you seen on the PPC or the way that you're implementing PPC campaigns since COVID hit?
Yeah, so obviously the whole COVID situation's been a big thing for all of us, but yeah, particularly for Amazon sellers. I mean, it's been tough, right, for a lot of people. But whenever there's anything, whenever there's anything bad happening, there's always creates opportunity, and that's pretty much what we've seen with this whole COVID situation. I mean, the last sort of 2.5 years, Amazon PPC has gone one way, right? It's got more and more competitive as there's more sellers coming to market. More and more people are realizing what an awesome opportunity Amazon is and jumping on that bandwagon. So everyone's competing for the same ad real estate, and that just ends up in one thing, right? The cost goes up. So we've always got, that's why we're always trying to find new innovative ways to do things differently and get a leg up on the competition. But the biggest thing for me that I've noticed, over this last 6 months is that because there's been so many sellers having difficulty getting inventory in, resulting in lower sales, they're cutting back on their ads, and we've seen quite a drop across the board really on cost per clicks, which is great, especially as they've been going upwards for such a long time. To see such a drop, in some cases seen as much as 35-40% decrease in average cost per click, which is massive, right? That coupled with the fact that there's more people online shopping on Amazon because they can't get to the stores because a lot of them are shut or they're isolating. So there's been a huge uptick in the available traffic, and we see that in not just in the huge increase in impressions, but also people clicking on ads. So if cost per clicks had stayed as high, ad spend would have gone through the roof. But we haven't seen that. We've seen the traffic and the impressions and clicks go up a lot, but with a big drop in cost per click. I think one of the big surprises is conversion rates. Typically, the average conversion rate on Amazon PPC is about 10%. Obviously, some products are much higher than that. Some are much lower. But the interesting thing during COVID is people's almost acceptance of longer delivery times. Prior to COVID, and I know you've seen. I'm sure you've seen this as well, Norm. That if you don't have that Prime badge on your listing, if you're not FBA and you're trying to run ads on an FBM listing, typically the conversion rate is terrible comparatively. But we haven't seen that massive drop off, even though people are switching to 3PLs to fulfill their inventory because they can't get it into Amazon, or they obviously haven't got that Prime badge. And we've still seen conversion rates stay comparatively where they were, even though the delivery time might be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out. People seem a lot more understanding of the situation and are prepared to wait that bit longer, which I was really surprised at. I was quite concerned that conversion rates were going to go through the floor and we'd have to dial back, but that certainly hasn't been the case. It's almost as if Amazon's making allowances for this fact as well, right? Because typically one of the one of the growing issues, I guess, over certainly the last 6 months, maybe even the last 12 months, is running out of inventory has been an absolute nightmare for sellers when it comes to ads, at least, to kind of bounce back, and not just in terms of organic ranking, but even in terms of ad positions. Like, you run out of inventory for a week or two. It never used to be that much of an issue. You could bounce back pretty quickly, but it's almost like you're being penalized to a certain extent when it comes to ads over this 6 months prior to COVID, at least. And every time someone would run out of inventory, it'd be that much more difficult to get back to those top ad positions, and you'd end up having to bid much higher. You kind of, like I said, being penalized. But we're not seeing that either at the moment, because obviously a lot of people are running out of stock. They might have inventory waiting at Amazon at the fulfillment center to be checked in, but it's not available. So the listing shows currently unavailable or whatever. But yeah, we're not seeing that same kind of penalty. So yeah, it's like Amazon are giving a little bit of leeway, I think.
Yeah, I think
so that's but just to see it going so far one way and then to suddenly switch back, I mean that's been a godsend, because otherwise certainly a lot of the accounts that we manage that I know have had issues with inventory would be taking a massive hit, and obviously Amazon doesn't want to take that hit at the same. We take the hit on PPC. Amazon's taking a hit in the pocket, so I guess they had to do something to allow for that.
So Kevin King was on a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how he's adding an FBA listing as well as an FBM listing through just conditions, right? So you just go in,
Yep.
You edit a condition, new SKU number. What are your thoughts on targeting both FBA and FBM listings?
Why
Together.
not? If you can get more real estate, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I really haven't heard too many people talking about targeting. Everybody targets FBA, but like you said, Amazon is starting to promote, or starting since March, promoting FBM listings. Probably not as high as FBA, and I don't know the stats on it, but why not do it if you can promote it?
Yeah, I mean,
listings.
exactly. Any opportunity that we can get to take up some more real estate, some more ad real estate, absolutely. And I know when you talk about variations and different bundles and stuff, any opportunity to take 3 or 4 ad positions rather than just take one, why wouldn't we? Like, I certainly don't see any reason not to. If you can make it work as a separate listing, and it's not just a variation on the existing listing, because then you can obviously only show one variation. But yeah, if it's a separate listing, absolutely. Especially given, like I just mentioned, that the conversion rates aren't going through the floor like they typically would. Yeah, why not?
And I guess you can experiment. So we just talked a little bit about variations, but now with the virtual bundles, being able to target those. So have you been doing any of that?
The thing with the virtual bundles is you can't target them with sponsored products. So you can with sponsored brands. So you can run brand ads on the bundles currently, but not sponsored products.
Right.
But I'm hoping that's going to change as well, because that gives us even more opportunity, right?
Okay.
But yeah,
so
currently you can target them.
There probably are a few people on the call today that are new to Amazon, and I think we should specify an Amazon sponsored product. What is it, and what is an Amazon sponsored brand?
Yeah, so sponsored products is the ads you typically see when you go to you type in a search result into the search bar on Amazon, and you have typically a banner across the top. That's a sponsored brand ad, and then you'll have 2, 3, or even 4 on some layouts. Ad positions that say sponsored. You've got a small sponsored on the side there. Sponsored product ads. They appear throughout the search results. So same on mobile. You'll typically have one at the top, and then every 4 or 5 listings, there'll be another 1 or 2 sponsored product positions. Then when you go onto product pages, you scroll down the page and you have a carousel of sponsored products related to this item. And then again, depends on the layout. Amazon's constantly changing the layout. But further down the page, you'll have another reel of sponsored products. So that's the main places that sponsored product ads appear. So it's on product detail pages, which is a huge opportunity, and on the SERP results. Sponsored brands, we've mentioned the main headline ad. That's typically what it used to be called, headline search ads, right? Before it was sponsored brands. And that was the predominant position. But now they've started adding in a whole bunch of other positions for sponsored brands as well. So we've got on product detail pages, there's additional, sometimes above or below frequently bought together, or above or below the reviews, or above or below the sponsored product carousel. And then again at the bottom of the page, you typically have 1 or 2 brands related to this item. So they're sponsored brand ads as well. And a whole bunch of other places. Certainly it's constantly changing, right? It's hard to keep up, but go to certain category pages. When you're using the browse tree to search rather than the search bar, we're starting to see a lot more ads show up there. Even in things like checkout pages now, they're not always there, but I've certainly seen it a number of times when I've been buying stuff. You go to a checkout page and there's suddenly an ad appears, and it's got a creative, it's got a headline, right? So sponsored products is literally, will take the snapshot of your main image. It'll take the first, depending on the layout, a certain amount of characters from your title, and it'll display your price and your review count and star rating. Sponsored brand ads allow you to have a little bit more control, and you can add up to 3 products. That's the 3 that you might see across the banner ad at the top of the search results. The other positions typically only show 1 product. So the product that's in the first position will typically show up in those other brand positions. And then there's, in addition to that, there's also sponsored brands video ads, which I'm sure some of you have seen when you're scrolling down the page on desktop in the search results, or on mobile. They've started to allow videos which autoplay as you scroll through them, like you would in a Facebook feed.
How are those converting, by the way?
For the most part, they're phenomenal. For the most part, there's always a but, right?
Right.
So yeah, it really depends on the product, and yeah, in the early days, not that video ads have been around that long, but certainly at the start when no one was doing it, there's a lot of videos that just filmed on an iPhone, like really poor quality, but it was just something new, and it's more interruptive advertising, right? So the sponsored product ads and sponsored brand ads, they're static, so it just kind of blends into the page. Right. Whereas video ads, people aren't used to seeing that on Amazon when they're scrolling through, so it really captures attention. So the click-through rate is through the roof. Like, lots of people click on it. If you've got a good product, then we're seeing amazing results, and the conversion rates are huge. And because not every man and his dog are doing it, there's less competition. So we're typically seeing fairly low cost per clicks, high conversions, and therefore low ACOSs. So it's something it's growing now. A lot more people are starting to implement it, but there's still a lot of opportunity. And if you can get a video, decent video knocked up, fairly quickly and fairly cheaply, if you're not seeing a lot of videos in your niche, I highly recommend going and running some video.
It doesn't have to be expensive. It just
not
can't
at all
look cheesy, but it's just a simple video that you not only can use for your product listing, you can also use as an ad. You could get basically one video, and you can use it in multiple. It's just basically repurposing it.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking for that, Rob Burns has been on the podcast, and he's got some really good packages for Amazon sellers. So you can check it out. But to get a video ad up running, it's very inexpensive. It's converting for the most part, really well. And I think Simon had a question too along those lines.
Yeah. So I think you guys touched on it a little bit, but are you seeing good results on sponsored video ads, and are they lower cost than other sponsored brand ads?
On the most part, yes. Typically, sponsored brand ads have been much more expensive in terms of higher cost per click, and it's kind of the next stage up the marketing funnel, right? Sponsored products is right at the bottom there. People are ready to buy. Sponsored brands is more towards building brand awareness. So you typically don't have the same conversion rate. You get really high click-through rates because they're quite prominent ad positions, but because there's less real estate, you haven't got all of these carousels of hundreds of ad positions on every single product page. So there's more competition, so the cost tends to be higher. Because video ads are so new, not everyone, there's not actually that many people running them right now. And as more and more people use it, I can only surmise that there's going to be more and more ad inventory available for video ads as well, because they're engaging, right? And that's why people who advertise on Facebook, videos always convert better than still ads,
Right?
Because it's
pattern
more
interrupt.
Yeah, exactly. So I can only see it going one way. But to answer your question, Si, yes, they're again, there are exceptions. I have seen a couple of highly competitive products that have got fairly high cost per clicks, but on the most part, they're much cheaper than sponsored brands.
Okay. And one of the things I want to point out, Darrell's going to be on the podcast, and today we're just kind of doing an overall look at PPC. But as we bring in Darrell on a regular basis, we're going to dive a little deeper into each type of circumstance. So we're going to have podcasts around that. But for today, just again, it's just very general. The trends, I know we already touched on one, and I've got one to add after you tell us. I don't think you thought of this one, or I know we've talked about it, but we haven't been doing it with a ton of clients yet, but this is going to kill it, I know. But what trends are you seeing in PPC advertising right now?
I think the biggest trend for me is that change is constant, right? Amazon's doing a right number on people like me that are trying to keep up with all the ever changing. It's pretty much every single day you log into Amazon and something's different. They've introduced a new ad type or a new ad placement or a new feature, or which is awesome. They're investing a lot of money into their advertising platform because it's generating them a lot of money. So I think that constant change is definitely a trend. On average, I think we're seeing at least one change a week to the advertising platform.
Right.
I think the introduction of all the additional ad types and features within. So we mentioned quickly sponsored products, sponsored brands. Sponsored display is the big one at the moment, and sponsored display has been around for a long time, right? At least a couple of years, but most people either used it with little success or didn't really understand it, and there wasn't a lot of features, and even now the reporting is non-existent. So the introduction there of being able to use product targeting, which is on Amazon, has been a game changer. We're seeing incredible results with product targeting and display ads. But going even further up that funnel, so that's on Amazon stuff, the off Amazon stuff, which predominantly was the only option available to most sellers, was views, right? So they would target people on and off of Amazon that had viewed your detail page or similar detail pages. Well, just in this last couple of weeks, they've started rolling out new targeting options, which include purchases. So people who have purchased products from your catalog, you can now target them on and off of Amazon. But also people the other one is searches. So people who have searched for your product or similar products, and the search terms that Amazon think are relevant to your product, you can now target those as well. And that's, rather than a cost per click model, it's a cost per 1,000 impressions model. But the reach there can be vast. So that's certainly something that they seem to be putting a lot of time and resources into, is developing the sponsored display, which is, it's not quite DSP. I don't want to go too far down that road because we don't actually run DSP right now. But yeah, that's kind of the programmatic advertising off of Amazon predominantly. But it's almost like they're picking out the best bits from, or not necessarily the best bits, but some of the more user-friendly pieces of DSP and working them into sponsored display. So it's given us more reach even outside of Amazon, which is pretty exciting. I think there's going to be a lot more developments, with sponsored display in the near future. Yeah, so that's something we're seeing a lot.
One of the areas that we're targeting is we're working it with rebates. So talking with Darrell, we've talked about this with a couple of our clients where, okay, we're running rebates, we're targeting certain keywords with rebates. The keywords that we're working with are a blend of what's converting on PPC. So Darrell sends me over a list, and then we target those. We actually pipe them through seller tools and we find out what's working. So what's converting, what's getting the most orders. Then we'll take our own research, mix it with Darrell's information, and then pump it out and do like a rebate campaign against it. So we know right off the bat, they're good converting keywords. We know we're going to make sales. We know the sales that we're going to make are, at least the keyword phrase, are keyword phrases that convert. And if you don't know, this is really interesting. So when I started to do rebate marketing, a few weeks ago, a little while ago, more than a few weeks ago, I found it amazing that you can have a keyword that looks like it's a great keyword that has 5,000 search volume. Okay, it could be 10,000 search volume, but then you have these smaller searches, keyword phrases, and you would think, okay, I'm going to go with the rebate for this larger one and maybe some long tails to support it. Then you find out, and I use seller tools to get this information for this, to extract out what keyword phrases are working. And you're amazed. All of a sudden, it's some of these much lower search volume that you would have spent a ton more on the higher search volume giving out rebates. And now you save money, you get more orders. And I know it's a little bit off topic, but I think it's really important that you know about this. But you combine that. If you find the winning combination where it's converting on PPC, it's a keyword that you want to target, then you've got a winning match. So anyway.
Absolutely. And then you start to rank higher, right?
Exactly.
So you start to rank higher, and because you've already proven that those keywords convert well for you, you've just spiked your conversion rate by using the rebates, and now you've got a way above average conversion rate. You had above average, even before the rebates. So now you've just kind of flagged to the algorithm that you convert massively on this keyword. So it's not just about getting the keyword ranked. It's getting it to stay there, right? That's the challenge that a lot of people have. They launch on the wrong keywords,
Yep.
They get ranked, and then they slip off because they don't convert well enough on them. So, so this kind of two-pronged approach is massively effective. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I just want to put in my 2 cents is that there is a launch strategy, and PPC is definitely part of it. Rebates. And for me, it's Amazon Post. Those are my 3 pillars when I launch. However, your launch has got to continue. So some people might tune down or tone down their budgets with PPC. Some people might stop rebates, and by limiting the exposure. So I'm one and done. I did my rebates. I'm going to sell millions. Amazon's always going to keep me in these positions. Nope. You have to watch them. You have to make sure that you're monitoring your keywords. You could get there could be an indexing problem. It could be your competitors just knocking you down. But you have to watch this on an ongoing basis. Right, the day after your launch and rank campaign ends, you should always be monitoring your keywords, and then maintain. Don't worry about spending more money on rebates. You won't have to spend as much. So let's say you did 100 rebates, you could probably get away with 10 or 15, but you're monitoring the keywords that are dropping. At the same time, you want to make sure that as the new converting keywords are coming through, you get them. Okay, Darrell's going to hand them to me. Again, I go through seller tools, and then I'm going to start to go really wide. And at the end of the day, every month we're adding new keywords. We're going wider and wider, the best converting keywords. And then afterwards, we can always go back. But if I see something that's going to convert on a consistent basis and something that might convert, I'm going to throw my money on the positive rather than the stuff that might convert. And I think a lot of people waste their money with PPC and with rebates because they're just going after the wrong words.
Absolutely, and I think just to add to your comments on launching, it's not a one-time event, right? And that's kind of how we build in the PPC strategy. It's an ongoing process. Like, always be launching, as people say, but it's not necessarily, like you said, this big, massive push on giving away thousands of product. You don't need to do that when you've got these longer tail, certainly the longer tail, lower volume, less competition keywords that you convert really high on. So yeah, it's just a constant process, right? Find what's working, push it. Find what's working, push it.
And well, I'll get to that in a second. But anyways, are there any useful techniques that you're using right now?
Yeah, I think probably one of the most useful things, I guess, for the newer sellers is Amazon's suggested bids. I'm not sure I've heard this spoke about too much recently, but certainly going back a couple of years, it was just common practice to look at what Amazon's suggested bid was and go 50%, 100% higher, just go straight in with a high bid and you're off to the races. Well, I'm finding more and more, certainly recently, that you can almost overbid sometimes, and it's like it's almost like it's a bit of a red flag, like almost like they're trying to prevent you from just buying your way to the top. They kind of want to know that your product's going to convert, it's going to be relevant to the buyer's search, and that kind of makes sense to me now, because that's what Amazon's all about, right? It's providing the best possible shopping experience for their customers. So if they start showing ads for products that aren't super relevant to what they've searched for, then that's gonna harm Amazon. So yeah, I've found that you certainly starting out, use Amazon's suggested bid. Amazon actually has started putting a lot of pop-outs in Campaign Manager. I don't know if you've seen any of these, Norm, but they're like giving highlights and stats on I think they say sponsored products 56% more likely to get impression. Keywords in a sponsored products campaign are 56% more likely to get an impression if you use the suggested bid than a random bid. And on sponsored brands, you're twice as likely to get your ad shown and get impressions if you use their suggested bid. So Amazon are even highlighting the fact that, you know, this is what they're recommending. And rather than reinvent the wheel all the time, you know, Amazon's got more data than any of us. You know, we have a lot of data, but Amazon's that's the gold, right? And if they're sharing that with us and saying this is what we suggest to get you more impressions, more visibility, and ultimately more sales, then why would we go against that? So yeah, I think that's a great tip for certainly for starting out. Yes, the keywords that we convert well on and that are driving us sales, yeah, we want to try and be a bit more aggressive with our bids on those keywords. But what we see all the time is people starting out and they'll dump a load of keywords in with a high default bid on that campaign, and they blow through a ton of cash and wonder, you know, where all the sales are. Well, you don't want to be investing heavily into your keywords until you've got data to prove that they're good keywords for your product. So yeah, Amazon's suggested bid is a lot of people just totally ignore it, and yeah, I'm seeing more and more results just starting out with a suggested bid as a start point at least. I think the other real game changer for me over the recent months has been the ability to add negative ASINs into auto campaigns. For years and years and years, this has been a real bugbear of mine. You know, you run an auto campaign, and historically, Amazon has always done this. They've always had the new auto campaigns. If anyone doesn't know, you've got 4 individual match types. You've got close match, loose match, substitutes, and complements. That's kind of always been there in the background, but we never had control over the individual bids for each of those match types. So what used to happen was you'd run an auto campaign and you'd have a bunch of ASINs that are just spending all of your budget and not converting because they're kind of irrelevant, or they might have thousands of reviews and you're a brand new product, so you're not going to convert very well against those types of products. But there was never any way of controlling that. There was it's always been lots of talk. You can negative phrase match the brand name and all kinds of different stuff, or you've got to try and find the keywords in their listing that is triggering your ad. And yeah, there's lots of theories, but nothing ever really seemed to make that much difference. So fairly recently, Amazon's finally done the update, and now you can add those ASINs as negatives to your campaign and ad groups within auto campaigns. So you can save a ton of wasted ad spend. So it's all getting focused on the product pages and search results where it's converting well. That's been a real game changer.
So that's the nugget, right?
Get to understand. That's been huge. You can really fine tune your auto campaigns now, whereas historically we just couldn't do that.
Right.
And because we don't have control over the keywords and the placements that those ads show, it's very difficult. And a lot of sellers end up, ACOS goes through the roof, they dial the budget down, they dial the bids down, and ultimately switch off the campaign. Auto campaigns can be phenomenal. And there's one particular account I've got in mind here that is absolutely nailing it with auto campaigns. But they never were before we had this level of control. It was always quite high ACOS, so we had always balancing the bid and the budgets. But now we're off to the races. They've just gone absolutely crazy because we're now we get to a level on a particular ASIN, we shut it off, and we just keep repeating that process. And now the ads are only showing on product pages and placements that convert like crazy, and the ACOS has come down to ridiculously low, and it's some of our biggest performing campaigns, and they're autos. We never would have had that without this ability to add negative.
That was
negative
unheard
ASINs.
of. That was unheard of before. Yeah.
Yeah.
You used to be just to grab data. bid high,
That's
grab data.
that's all we used to do, right? We'd
Yeah.
just use it to mine for search terms that we could turn into keywords, and then we'd focus on the manual keywords.
Right.
And that, like I said, to have this switch, this instant switch as soon as we could start, we mined all the search term reports from the last few months and identified all of these ASINs that had spent a ton of budget and added them all as negatives, and it was like flipping a switch. It was massive. So yeah, if there's one thing I could suggest anyone listening to this actually does, if you haven't already done it, is go and pull a search term report, sort it by your auto campaigns, and find all of those ASINs that are just bleeding your budget, and get rid.
Okay. So Prime Day, fourth quarter.
Yes.
I need your recommendations.
It's certainly going to be different, right?
I don't know what to expect.
I think it could go one of two ways, right? I think it's either going to be it could potentially be a bit of a disappointment, only for the reason being that Amazon are still struggling with getting inventory in, right? The fulfillment centers are still really struggling. They're putting a lot more limitations as well on accounts as to how much inventory they can send in. But for the people that don't have those issues, I think it could be epic for a few reasons. I think the amount of people during lockdown that have started buying on Amazon that never used to buy on Amazon or never used to buy online, certainly older generations, my in-laws, for example, wouldn't even, they wouldn't do anything online. They were absolutely petrified. Like, they wouldn't do online banking. They still used to walk to the bank like every week to go and get cash out. And yeah, now my father-in-law's always too busy to do anything because he's waiting in for deliveries. He's constantly ordering stuff on Amazon. And I think, that's kind of a huge shift, right? When you think about that globally and certainly in the US, being the size of the market it is, that's a game changer. Those people aren't just suddenly going to stop shopping on Amazon now they've realized how convenient it is. So yeah, I think it could go off, especially for the accounts that can stay in stock.
The other thing to think about, we talked about it earlier, but this is going to be so important. One of our clients, big 8-figure seller, they're waiting now over 6 weeks for their inventory to be received in Amazon. Ridiculous.
Amazing.
They can't do anything. Amazon's not doing anything. We've got other clients that are waiting. They get it instantly, and others that are waiting 3 weeks. Okay, how do you get around that during this time? So exactly like we were talking about at the beginning, you want to make sure that if something happens with your inventory, if you can't get it in, if people are just sending it in, you might have problems. To take care of that, make sure that you have the FBA and FBM turned on. And if your product's not in there, it's going to be an inventory game. And if you have it, you'll win. If you don't have it, you'll lose. So make sure that you have inventory at your 3PL or wherever, your garage, but have it turned on and have your sponsored ads working, your sponsored ads working with both.
Yeah, what we've done now with all of our client accounts is where they have set up an FBM listing as well, we've just added that FBM SKU to all their campaigns. So if the FBA listing is live, then they're running the ads on the FBA listing. As soon as that becomes ineligible because they're out of stock on the FBA listing, then the FBM listing switches in and takes over. So that's something else to bear in mind. Like you don't necessarily need to go and create a whole bunch of new campaigns. You can just add that new additional product into each of your existing campaigns.
Yeah, and that will definitely help you with the sales. Again,
yeah, definitely.
You just have to make sure that you've got it in both locations and they're both turned on your Amazon listing. Do you see any major mistakes people are making right now?
In terms of
Setting up their PPC
for
or just running PPC campaigns?
I think the biggest thing is it's never really changed, right? It's people trying to do too much with too little. What I mean by that is, trying to target too many keywords or too broader keywords out the gate without the budget to back it up, right? I think we try and do everything in our business and think about, the old Pareto principle, 80-20. What's the 20% of things we can do to get 80% of the results? And that's no different when it comes to PPC, certainly when starting out. Don't try and throw mud at the wall and see what sticks. Start really, really focused, really narrow, really relevant. Relevancy is I try and drum this into people all the time, right? The more relevant you can be, the better results you're going to get. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't grow campaigns out, and we do it every day. Grow campaigns out that have literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of keywords that all generate sales. But to do that out the gate, you're spreading your budget far too thin. So, my top tip would be, the things that I see people doing wrong would be, don't try and run too many keywords at once. Certainly up front. Start really, really focused, really relevant. If you're selling a silicon spatula, don't be targeting kitchen utensils. It's way too broad. Right. Yes, you'll make sales on it, but you're not going to convert highly. Typically, there's always anomalies. But you can spend a ton of money on those higher volume keywords that just aren't going to translate into revenue for you. And I think the other thing is not focusing enough on profit, and this is where I was going to lead into for the recommendations for Prime Day. Focus on profitability is a huge one, right? We're all in business to make money, not just to make sales. So if you want to just make sales, crank up your bids, crank up your budget, and watch your sales take off. But if you're not making any money, or even worse, you're losing money, that's not a great position to be in, right? And I think certainly days like Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and these huge high traffic days, we see it every year, right? There's always people posting online these crazy numbers. They've done 100,000, 250,000, 500,000 in sales in a day or whatever. But the question I always come back to is, how much money did you actually make off that though? Like, that's all well and good, but if your ads are running at double what you can afford to spend, then you've just you blew through all that inventory and you've got nothing to show at the end of it. So focusing on profitability in your business, not necessarily on your PPC campaigns, but we would suggest trying to run your campaigns at least at break even. You can extract more out of it down the line, but try and focus on getting those PPC campaigns to at least break even, so that then you're driving the maximum sales you can afford to drive, which is going to affect organic ranking, and then you make your profit on those organic sales, which are typically more sales than you're making through PPC.
Well, we've seen, and we see this all the time, and just this week this happened, where we have a client that came on, and he's probably listening. Sorry, I'm not going to mention your name. This is all in good. But anyways, we watch a client that has a successful product, has a great brand listing, like a product listing, has the PPC, and they're nervous about spending money because it's PPC. And a lot of new sellers will have issues that, I'm spending $1,000. Yeah, but take a look at what you're getting out of it. You can measure it by ACOS. I don't usually measure by ACOS, but if you want to measure it by ACOS and you've got a low ACOS of let's use the average, like 23%. Why are you not spending more? So we sometimes we're in a struggle, we're in a fight to get people to spend the proper amount. And you're not doing your brand any justice if you don't want to spend the money. You can, and what I told this client is like, look, let's double it up. And if you get, double the sales, awesome. Let's just do it until we start to see where the sweet spot is, and then we can dial back. And then we can really go wide on that sweet spot as well. But don't be afraid to spend money. And this is all any of the new sellers that are looking at there's a right time and a right place to spend money. PPC, that's, turning your inventory, making you sales. Remember, every time that you have a sponsored ad sale, not only are you building your brand awareness because people are seeing it, but you're also gaining organic sales, which a lot of people don't realize. And that's why we tell people a lot of the times, shooting for whatever it is, 20, 30% ACOS, you got to know your break even. And even if you get break even or even higher, you've probably generated a few organic sales. And I just want to say one other thing too. If you've got a subscription based, or like for me, soap, people buy soap. I'll spend way over the amount. Like my ACOS is crazy high to get new sellers or buyers. Once they get it and they buy my soap and they open it, they see the package, they've got a great customer journey or experience, then they're going to come back and they're going to buy more and they're going to buy more. So you have to look at it that end too. So it's brand awareness, it's building trust, and a lot of the time when you've got the a sponsored ad, you don't necessarily see the real results from that sponsored ad.
Yeah, it's definitely a long-term play, isn't it? I was chatting with a client the other day, and ACOS at the moment has gone up. It's out of season for their particular products, and they wanted to dial back the budgets like by a lot. And I'm like, honestly, don't. Like at this time of year for their products, they're great Q4 products, right? So people are still browsing, and people spend a lot of time looking around for product ideas, and yes, you're getting your ad clicked on and they're not purchasing. But when it comes to Prime Day, or it comes to Black Friday or Christmas, you've already planted a seed, right? And if you've got a great listing and great branding, that's what sticks with people, right? So you're building your organic sales for the future as well, because these people, even people that have bought your product, they buy that product and they get it home and they open it and they love it, and they what do? Friends come in, family comes round, and they're like, oh, this is cool. Where'd you get that? Oh, it's on Amazon. They see the brand, then they come to Amazon searching for your brand. Now you've just made more sales, and you haven't paid for that ad. You've paid for the ad once, and you've made multiple sales. So it's measuring the organic growth of your business long term, not necessarily right now this month in the short term. So it's what we're doing now is having a knock-on effect for years to come, and we see that all the time. Once we've been working with clients for some time, we see things start to snowball, and that's not necessarily what we're doing right here, right now. It's all based on what we've done previously over the last couple of years.
So Simon's got a question here about PPC automation tools versus it's so small. What does it say, Kels?
It's
Do you rate PPC automation tools, or would you say to manage all PPC manually?
With that, manually, I always suggest that people try to understand PPC. You take it on yourself. If you have a small company, if you have a product or two, get to understand it. Get to understand the process. And there's lots of training out there. Brian Johnson's got training. He's got PPC Scope as an automation tool. There's PPC Entourage. There's so many of them out there. that do full automation. And you can do that. I've always found that full automation never worked for my products. Manual always worked, most of the time. Now I've got a team that works on PPC, but where the conflict comes in a lot of the time is I see small people, small sellers coming in, and they've come off of an agency that they might be spending $2,000, 1,500. Ours is $750, but they don't need it, and they're spending these big dollars on agencies. And hey, look, if you're a bigger brand, absolutely 100%, you need somebody looking at your campaigns, working on the campaigns. That's the agency side of the business. If you've got a brand selling $10,000, $20,000 a month, you've got minor ad spend, then you probably want to look at a different way of doing this, because you're coming back to profitability. You're not making any. If you're going to an agency that's sapping you out of your profits. And again, we try to discourage those types of agents, or those types of sellers, but a lot of them just want it because it's an agency. They want it out of their hands. And Simon, you said, I guess you're going to be dropping a tool on us or something like that. Yeah, that is one of the things we're doing. I like to put it a different way, but Darrell's come up with, like with the agency, he uses certain techniques for our clients. And he's basically taken that and he's created a semi-automatic tool where it'll work with the seller and give suggestions. And it will take hours of work and bring it down into 5 minutes, 10 minutes worth of work. So, I mean, Darrell, if you want to talk a little bit about it, just so.
Yeah, I think just to highlight Si's question there, like I've used all full automation tools, I think, over the years, and I found the same thing, right? It's just purely a set of rules that you have to set, right? So if you don't understand PPC, or you don't have a specific strategy in mind, or you don't know what your max bid should be, what your maximum click threshold or spend threshold should be for your product, because it's different for every single product, right? Depending on your conversion rates and all that kind of stuff. So what we see a lot of the time with people trying to use full automation tools is that they just don't understand it from the outset, and at least enough to get the full use of the software. So that's why we done things the opposite way. So I developed the system and the strategy that we use for our clients, and then tried to figure out what's the best way to replicate that in a way that, like you said, smaller sellers, Norm, that particularly don't need an agency. They don't need to be paying us big fees when they can be reinvesting that money back into their ads. So the workaround was actually bulk files. I don't know whether anybody's heard of bulk operations, but it's essentially a way of downloading your entire advertising campaign data. So all of your campaigns, all of your ad groups, keywords, all of the bids, and all of the data that goes with that. And we've essentially built a tool that does all the analysis of all of that entire account, along with your search term report, and does all of the heavy lifting. So where you'd be sorting and filtering a search term report for the stuff that is working, that isn't working, looking for negatives to add, adjusting your bids based on what your target ACOS is for a given keyword or campaign or product. And it does all of that at once. So basically, a download from Amazon, you search term report in a bulk file, upload it into our software. It does its thing in the background based on the exact strategies that we use to manage
Hey,
Kirsty.
Christy.
To manage our clients' campaigns in a way that people can afford, right? Because we just felt that the smaller sellers kind of getting a raw deal. They're the guys that need the most help, and there's actually the least help available because everybody's talking about all of these 30 different campaign types, and talking about the more complicated stuff, which is kind of irrelevant until you've got the basics right and built a solid foundation. And sponsored products is that solid foundation. I know we've talked a little, Norm, here about, we've touched on sponsored brands and sponsored display, but my advice to newer sellers is always maximize the opportunity with sponsored products first, because that still accounts for 70% of the ad sales. So start there, get your solid foundation, then use that data to move on to sponsored brands and sponsored display. But so it's not it's not a full automation tool, but it does give you the option to to have additional features. You can set individual target ACOSs for keywords. You can select certain keywords. You go with this keyword, under no circumstances can we lower the bid on that one. We can stop bid adjusting it, but we can literally adjust thousands of bids for all products in all campaigns all at once, all based on your targets. That's all you need to do. You don't need to understand PPC. We have training and stuff that accompanies it, all the tutorials, what it does and why it's doing that. That's all there available. But if you're really struggling and you just want something that can optimize your campaigns for you, that can find new keywords from your search term report, add negative keywords, and keep things super, super simple without all the overwhelm and having to worry about whether you're doing things rightly or wrongly, that's what we built.
One of the things that you have on the app or the tool, I was corrected by Darrell before, it's the tool. But if you go over and you check it out, it really is no risk. It's 2 weeks. Just check it out and see what it does. Again, small, medium sellers, you'll save a ton, an absolute ton. And I can tell you, it's $97 a month. You'll be able to do this 100% on your own or with a VA. It'll be done very quickly. You've got the 2 week lead time, or 2 week time period to test it out. And, I'd love to hear, what you have to say about it, or you could leave a review on the site, because I got involved with this only because I saw what it was doing for the smaller seller. There is a huge void there, and we were getting sellers that shouldn't be on the agency platform. So check it out. And I know, like, one of the things that I stand by on this podcast is I don't take affiliate fees. I only promote anything, and promote is if it could help. I get nothing from Seller Tools. I get nothing from Helium 10. I do have to tell you, though, I am involved with this company. So if you take a look at it, I'm involved there. I think that, I want full disclosure, but at the same time, anybody that we talk about on this podcast, there's nothing coming in. If anything, I try to get discounts. So for you, instead of, taking an affiliate fee. So check it out. It's at sponsoredprofit.com. It's $97. You get a 2 week trial, and let us know. I'd love to hear in the comments section what you think about it. After your 2 week trial, I think it'll streamline some of your pain points, anyways, in PPC. So, Darrell, do you have anything in closing?
No, just really to say, thanks for having me on, and it's excited to be working with you, and just want to wish everyone a successful Prime Day whenever that happens. And like I said, focus on profits on Prime Day, not sales. Really focus on those keywords that are proven to do well for you, consistently. Dial back the bids, or even pause keywords that aren't performing well for you, because they're just going to lose you even more money on Prime Day with all the extra traffic. Just 80-20. Always think about 80-20. What are the 20% of my keywords that are driving 80% of my sales, and making me money, making me profit, money that you're going to walk away with in your pocket at the end of Prime Week, and focus your budget on there. Don't worry about stupidly high bidding, because all you're going to do is blow your budget in the first hour. Increase your bids a little bit on the stuff that works well, and yeah, extend your budget. Try and stay visible, as long as you can throughout the day. If you're only spending that budget on keywords that perform well for your product, you're onto a winner, right?
Right.
You've got very little risk by having a really big budget that keeps you visible throughout the day. Everyone else is going to blow their budget early doors, or certainly by lunchtime in mid-afternoon, and then what ends up happening is your cost per click starts to go down as the day goes on, because there's less and less competition. So while everybody else is out of inventory, or they've blown their entire budget by lunchtime, you're now getting clicks and sales for pennies comparatively by the end of the day. So yeah, that'd be my top tips. Focus on profitability, really condense the keywords and the campaigns and the products that you're advertising, but make the most of it throughout the entire day or week, whatever Prime Day looks like this year.
Perfect. Last call for questions. Is anybody, Simon, do you have any other questions? Anybody have questions? We'll try to answer them. If you post them a little bit later, we definitely will answer them in our comment section. So what was Christy saying, Kels?
I love the fact that these guys come from the viewpoint of profit and not just sales. I don't know any other team that does that from a PPC perspective.
Thanks, Christy. All right, so I think that's it for today. Laura. Oh, there's our partner, Laura McCall. Welcome to the podcast, Laura. All right, so that's it for today's podcast. Thank you, Darrell, for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, look forward to the next one, and we're getting to something a bit deeper, right?
Yeah, and by the way, if anybody listening does have some ideas about PPC, any areas that you want us to cover, just let us know, and we'll make sure that Darrell covers it on the next episode.
Sounds good.
Okay, so that's it for today. I think that's it anyways. But anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed the podcast. I know that I had to have a tongue twister in there. I never get through a full podcast without the tongue twister. So that was it. Hopefully that's the end of it. So if you're looking for full episodes, head over to my Facebook page, Norm Farrar, aka the Beard Guy. Or if you want to have visuals, if you want to see this, there's a load of video over on our YouTube channel. We have a ton of little clips. We have a ton of other content on there. Plus, if you want to have ongoing content we don't have on the podcast, subscribe to the newsletter. Just go to I Know This Guy. Sorry, that's my other podcast, Lunch with Norm. Subscribe to the newsletter. It does not suck. Okay, I promise it doesn't suck. And you're going to get a ton of content about online marketing, not just Amazon marketing, okay? And you're going to be hearing about other business people, entrepreneurs, brand gurus, although I hate the word guru, but anyways, experts in their field. Okay, so the next podcast is Monday, and I've got a buddy of mine for the last couple of years who's I call him a tech genius, but Dima Kubrick. You got to watch it. So tune in on Monday, and also tune in Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at noon Eastern Standard Time. So that's it for today, everybody. Oh, no, it's not. Kelsey, what do you have to say? I almost blew you off.
You almost, yeah.
I blew you off.
Yes, follow us on social media. We have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest. We are an official podcast, so you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you find podcasts, you can find Lunch with Norm. And if you haven't yet, please like this episode, spam that like button, or as Norm says, smash it. And that's it. We are back to our regular Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. So no more Thursday episodes after this week. We hope we didn't confuse anyone with our surprise Thursday episodes,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's it for me, I guess.
Well, you know what? Every time you say we're a real podcast, I think of Pinocchio. Like, I'm a real boy. You know, we're our podcast. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, everybody. So really appreciate you tuning in. If you have any other suggestions for the podcast or people you like to see, please let us know. And thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Entrepreneur.